Hi. So, what are some of the implications for what we've discussed in this podcast series? Let me show you a chart. This is where I think we're heading in terms of our next physical evolution, but it's also a spiritual evolution. And we're moving from our animal nature on the lower right hand corner to our human nature, moving from an instinct based or an emotional based being to a more virtues based, critical thinking being who's controlling their emotions and learning to control their ego. But what we're moving to next, I believe, is a more spiritual nature where we're controlling not only our emotions and our ego, but also our thoughts. And control of our thoughts is going to be essential to the exercising of spiritual abilities that will be acquired as we go through this next period of evolution. And where do these come from? Let me show you. This is a chart from my book. I know it may be a little blurry, but it's showing you the different paranormal abilities, or what I call spiritual abilities, that are present in the different non-physical dimensions. Now, I got this information from the Arthur Powell books on the different non-physical bodies and from Charles Ledbetter's books on the astral and the mental dimensions. But you can see that as we go into less dense dimensions, we have less and less ability to use our physical senses. So that's replaced by some of the paranormal abilities, and again, I call them spiritual abilities, that would enable us to travel, communicate, and manipulate objects, or in some cases, manipulate energy. People in the physical dimension today can access those abilities. Some of them go into a trance to do it, and others can do it while maintaining waking consciousness, and that's a specific training that you go through. But the critical component of that is learning how to quiet your mind. And you do that primarily through meditation. We see that growing in the Western culture as people adopt more of the Eastern religion practices. But what quieting your mind does is allows your subconscious mind to communicate with your conscious mind. When you have all these thoughts and emotions going on in your conscious mind, you can't hear your subconscious, or you can't hear the higher dimensional bodies from your physical body. But with a quiet mind, you can. And that's what allows you to access some of these spiritual abilities while you're in your physical body. But this is going to become more commonplace. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, is because it calls for control not only of your emotions and your ego, but also of your thoughts. And your thoughts, what I mean by that is the intention behind what your thoughts are. So that's the next level of control that we'll need to practice as we evolve physically. So what are some of the other implications for what I've discussed about a wave-based multidimensional reality? They can answer a lot of questions, and it's a very simple answer. Instead of saying we live in a hologram, or we live in a simulation, or we live in multiple worlds, or whatever, a wave-based reality can explain a lot just with a very simple paradigm. So I'll go down through this list, and we've talked about some of these questions, or the answers to some of the questions, but I'll just go over them again. Since we're here, what's the purpose of our life on Earth? It's spiritual evolution. If we're eternal beings, we're coming to a temporary physical existence so we can learn how to control our ego and our emotions, and then also our thoughts as we evolve physically here, but we're really eternal beings. Why is there evil in the world? Evil is to teach us. Being an eternal being, you can't die. So you may be a victim of crime or war or illness. Bad things can happen to you. That's the third question. But it all gets chalked up to experience in your eternal existence. So there's no penalty that you pay in your death here, whether it's a violent death or death from illness or a death from old age. It all goes back to your experience as an eternal being. And that's why these things happen. And that's what a wave-based multidimensional environment can explain. What's the purpose for the existence of the universe? Well, if you're a wave-based being, you could also be the being controlling celestial objects. And we've heard that in other books. I won't get into it here, that being a wave-based being with no body, you could become the consciousness for an entire planet or a sun or a quasar or a galaxy even. But that opens up those possibilities, and that's only possible in a wave-based reality, not in a particle-based reality. So what is death? I showed you that in that chart a couple episodes back in the little blue cell, that as you move from a more dense dimension to a less dense dimension, you have to shed the more dense body in order to move into the less dense body with your spiritual body, to your consciousness. What are paranormal abilities? They're spiritual abilities. They're how non-physical beings travel, communicate, and manipulate objects or manipulate energy, depending on what dimension you're in. And why are there paranormal abilities in the Bible? And the Bible's littered with supernatural events and supernatural abilities from prophets, from Jesus, from angels that are present. And it's all part of spiritual evolution, and it's all part of our education, is that we have higher dimensional beings coming down into the physical dimension to teach us, to lead us by example, and to use these spiritual abilities to help us from a physical aspect in case we're crippled or ill, to heal us, or to show us. You can imagine the different things, show us different things, but to use those spiritual abilities as the proof for what they're trying to say. But the whole idea is that the use of paranormal abilities or supernatural abilities and events in the Bible is for our spiritual education as well. There's a number of other things that could be covered and could be answered by just the simple change in our understanding of saying we live in a completely or fully wave-based reality. I just wanted to go over these things here, but we can cover other things. If you want to write me questions in the comments, I can answer them there. I would appreciate it if you would like this session as well as the podcast. I'll also give you another session with other references that you can look at that will talk more about multiple dimensions. We'll talk more about spiritual evolution. I hope you'll join me for that next. Take care.